Tour of Shaline Tsuruga, Chapter 1, Part 2. Over the next few days, Kaizen came up with a story about his cat had gotten out to get food while he was sick and ended up finding her after he got better, attacked by a wild animal, barely hanging on. He decided to end her life after he knew she couldn't recover very well, and it was the humane way to end her suffering. As for why he is now traveling with a young woman, his brother, her father, died in his sleep from an unknown illness, and even though he travels, she was more than willing to travel with him. He bought her a kimono and taught her how to put it on. They tried different styles of hair to tuck her ears in, but eventually they decided to cover her head with a cloth in a wrap-like cover. Shaline decided to keep her tail tucked up into the kimono, which was easier than trying to wrap it or tie it up. Kaizen, also, taught her how to speak a little bit more naturally. Always referring to herself wasn't a proper way to speak, nor would it pass in other situations. The two traveled around, keeping the fact that Shaline was his cat companion, until one day, while they were visiting Kyoto, a woman from Kaizen's past approached him in a small little restaurant. Kaizen instantly knew her and greeted her with familiarity. "Kanade-san, it has been a long while, has it not?" "Tsuruga-kun? It has. How have you been?" the woman asked before looking over to Shaline. "Who is this? Is she your niece? You remember my brother, Kaiza?" Kanade nodded her head. "This is his daughter. He passed away right at the end of the Boshin War, leaving her with no parents. Her mother died in childbirth." Kaizen looked over to Shaline. "She was being taken care of by some neighbors the past few years. I took it upon myself to help finish raising his daughter. Kaiza was a dear brother to me." Shaline nodded. "I know my uncle traveled a lot, but I didn't mind. I didn't really fit in back home," Shaline added. "Tsuruga Shaline," she introduced herself. "Kanade Mitsuki. Tsuruga-kun, I need to tell you..." "Hey Mom, did you get the rice this morning?" a young man called out from behind the curtain. He walked out and Kaizen looked over, and Shaline watched as Kaizen froze. The young man approached the table. No, Matsuda-kun said he was going to deliver it an hour ago," Kanade replied. "Oh, Jun, I want you to meet someone." The young man looked over to the table. "Jun, this is my old friend, Tsuruga Kaizen. Tsuruga-kun, this is my son, Kanade Jun." Shaline noticed that Kaizen kept looking at the young man. "Hey, I'll go get the rice. Tsukino said he'll cover until I return." Jun bowed before dismissing himself from the restaurant. Kaizen looked over to Kanade. "Who is his father?" Kaizen asked. But Shaline could sense her master already knew the answer, even if she couldn't deny the resemblance. I tried writing a letter to you, but it was returned due to no one being able to locate you." Kanade got real quiet. Can we go talk in private?" Kaizen nodded. "Kiki, can you take over for a moment and get Tsuruga-chan something to drink? Anything she wants." A young girl, probably no older than 16, nodded and walked over. "Tea would be fine." Shaline looked around. "Do you have a place where I can use the bathroom?" Shaline asked as Kiki walked over. "Oh, yes, just go through that door there. There's a water closet on the right. If there isn't any water to wash your hands, let me know. I'll replace it, Kiki said. Shaline got up and went out the door that was opposite of where her master and Kanade left. There was a small window at the top of the hall. She could hear two people talking. She shut the door, took off the scarf on her head to let her ears be free so she could easily hear the conversation. What was in the letter, Kanade-san? A few months after you left, I got sick. It was bad. I thought I was dying. So Kunoichi-sensei came by and I found out I was pregnant, which terrified me. You know how our society sees husbandless maidens who are pregnant. Is he? Shaline could pick out Kaizen's voice. You were the only one I ever slept with like that. So yes, June is your son. Shaline heard her master break down. I had to lie to everyone and say that we were wedded in private. My father disowned me. And thankfully, my mother still spoke to me without my father's knowledge, and thankfully no one ever questioned anything. I kept looking for you when the Shinsengumi would go through the city. When I didn't see you after June was born, I thought you died. I'm so sorry. Shaline could hear him crying. She had only ever seen him cry once before she was human. I'm sorry I left you alone all these years. It's been 21 years. I'm so sorry. Does he know? I told him that you had gone and joined the war before I found out I was pregnant with him. And when my letter was returned after he was born, I told him that you had gone to hopefully bring peace to our home. I never really told him one way or the other, because I hoped you were still alive. Kai, I missed you so much. Shaline heard her start to cry as well. If you will allow me, I want to be part of his life. I know I can't make up for the years that I wasn't here, but I want to get to know my son. That's for him to decide. How are you going to tell your niece? I'll tell her tonight. And then tomorrow, maybe we can come back and see where things go. Come in the morning, before the restaurant opens. I'll introduce you properly to June. She heard them start to move after a few moments of what sounded like them trying to pull themselves together. Shaline quickly rubbed her head and quickly checked the bucket in the water closet. Still had water, so she wasn't gonna have to lie. She scurried back into the room and sat down at the table, and there was a cup of tea waiting for her as she sat down. Shaline looked over as Kaizen and Kanade walked back in, and her master sat down at the table again. Why don't you both eat on the house today? For an old friend. Kanade smiled. No, I can't. You can. And you will. And don't worry. I know what to give both of you. Kanade smiled. Shaline could sense that there was a slight pain behind her smile, but smiled back nonetheless. June walked in just as his mother was about to go back beyond the curtain. Oh, perfect timing. June, can you make 2 of the house specials? And make them my way, please. Not how we usually make them. Of course, Mom. Something up? June asked, setting the large stack of rice down. Oh no, I just took a walk down memory lane with an old friend. The conversation trailed off as they went to the back. Later that night, after the two settled into their hotel room, Shaline could sense Kaizen was lost in himself. She sat next to him, laid her head on his leg, and started purring. She felt him chuckle a bit. Even though this is still weird, it still brings me some comfort. He started, stroking her between the ears. Knowing you, I am assuming that you overheard everything at the restaurant. Shaline nodded her head. Kaizen chuckled, his ever-curious kitten. I'm at a loss, kitten. I have a son. Master, did you really not know? Shaline asked, sitting up, Kaizen's hand falling into his lap. No. And it's not like I slept with her because she was just a pretty face. I loved her. I was going to marry her, but I was recruited into the Shinsengumi 1 year after the Bakumatsu started. It must have happened my last night with her. I promised her that I would return. And that was my promise. I didn't know she got pregnant because of that night. Whenever the Shinsengumi would come through Kyoto, I would always ask around, but no one could tell me anything about her. It was almost like she didn't want me to find her. Now I know. Kaizen reached out and drew Shaline into a hug. He broke down again. I have a son. Someone to carry my name if he wants it. So he will get the name Kaizen? This made Kaizen laugh loudly. No, my dear kitten. Tsuruga, my family name. I know he has Mitsuki's family name, but it's not hard to adopt my family name. Of course, I won't force him. That is his choice, if he wants to take his mother's name or mine. He petted her ears. Shaline couldn't help but smile because her master was smiling now. Do you still love her? Shaline felt Kaizen stop petting her. His hand fell back into his lap again. Is it strange that I do? Kaizen leaned back and looked at the ceiling. I don't think I ever stopped loving her. Knowing that she was probably waiting for me kept me alive during the war. Apart from you. He smiled and scratched her behind the ears, eliciting a purr from her. Do you still want to marry her? This marriage concept was still relatively new to her, but she understood enough to note that two people in love often did it. I don't know if she will have me. He sat back up and crouched over. I left her alone for 21 years, raising our son, telling lies that we were wedded in secret to protect her purity, and not once making contact. Sometimes I think back and probably realize I didn't try hard enough. A large sigh left his lips. I should have tried harder. I should have sought her out whenever we were in Kyoto. Maybe, just maybe, I could have had this wonderful relationship with her and my son. But then I think about it, and I never would have found you. Master, you never really talk about when you found me. I have a faint memory of smelling blood from those early days. What happened? We had just been in a battle when we passed by. I heard small mules. The other men thought I was going crazy, but when I returned with you after nursing you to health, well, they started calling me soft. But we quickly showed them how great a team we were. Kaizen smiled. Tomorrow, we are going over to Mitsuki's again. Would you settle down if June wants to try and have a relationship? Shaline asked. Kaizen hadn't thought about it. Shaline watched him sit in silence for a few good minutes before he spoke again. If Mitsuki would have me, I just might. He looked over to her. Listen, if you want to keep traveling, don't let me stop you. I'll miss you, my little kitten, but don't feel like you have to be tied down because of me. Shaline shook her head. I'll stay by your side, Master, until the end. Kaizen couldn't help but smile. Although, I will have to tell Mitsuki and June the truth about you. I don't think I could hide this. But for now, we'll keep up the charade. Come, let us rest, Kaizen said before tucking himself into his futon. Kaizen and Shaline returned to the restaurant in the morning. Just as Kanade was arriving back from her early morning errands. When they entered, she called her son to come join them in the dining room. She watched as June gingerly approached Kaizen. It seemed like Kanade told June who her master was. Kaizen asked him if it was too late to start a relationship with him, telling him if he had known June was around, he would have made sure to find him and his mother and never let them go. The meeting ended with June and Kaizen grasping each other in a tight hug. The son wanted to get to know his father, and vice versa. Soon, Kaizen did as he said he would. He settled down with his new bride, officially this time, and his grown son. Mitsuki took Kaizen's name, and after a few years of his mother being married to his father, June officially changed his name to his father's. Kaizen told them about Shaline's true nature, and that the whole niece thing was a cover story, admitting to Mitsuki that Kaizen died in childless in truth, and the four of them lived happily. Shaline watched as her master and her family grew older, but they quickly learned Shaline wasn't aging. So as time went on, Shaline either stayed at home or went by herself to town. Eventually, the story became that Shaline was June's baby sister, Mitsuki having her late in life.